Hi, if you are a BigScoots customer who have been using our performance and security, or maintenance services which comes with our Cloudflare Enterprise services, then we have recently introduced a new settings page inside the WPO portal to make your Cloudflare Enterprise journey much easy to manage and much easy to maintain. Now let me show you what that settings page looks like. So if you head over to the site details page inside your WP portal and select the domain for which you have already purchased any of the services and go to the Cloudflare tab, you would see a new settings option has been added here called Enterprise Settings. If you click on this tab, this new settings page would come up. The goal of the settings page is to ensure that you don't have to reach out to the support team for every single minor changes in your Cloudflare Enterprise experience. Instead of that, if you want to make certain tweaks or adjustment to your Cloudflare Enterprise settings, you would be able to do that very easily through this settings page. Each of the settings that are mentioned on this settings page has a brief explainer written below it for you to understand them better so that you can see whether or not you should be using this option or what this option actually does. But despite that, in this video I'm going to briefly explain all of these options and to show you how you can enable or disable this. So the page CDN page caching is one of the key pillars of our performance and security or maintenance service offering, which makes your website much faster by caching your web pages and static contents in the Cloudflare Global CDN. But in certain cases, if you have a website where you don't want your pages to be cached in the global CDN, but you want the static files like CSS, JavaScript, images to be cached in the global CDN and served through the CDN, just don't want the page caching features, now you can do it pretty easily. Just head over to the enterprise settings page, turn off this toggle, click save, and as soon as you do that, and you should see a pop-up like this that would say that it might take up to 30 seconds to reflect these changes. And then when you come back here, where you see the cache enabled inside the BigScoots cache settings page, when you refresh this page, now you should see that page cache is disabled, only static files are cached, which means that now page caching has been disabled for your website and only static files are being cached. In scenarios like this, it is highly recommended once you make this change, you clear the cache for your website to ensure that if anything is cached at this point, it gets a fresh start. Now the next option is cache by device type. In certain scenarios, if you're using some themes where the website or the theme requires you to have a separate kind of a design for the mobile and a separate for the tablet, separate for the desktop, or maybe you have some kind of a code in place inside your theme or your plugins where you are checking whether the user is coming from which kind of device they're coming from and then showing them some different kind of content based on their device. In scenarios like that, the cache based device type would be really helpful, because when you turn this option on, what it's gonna do is, instead of just having one singular cache for everyone across the globe, it will separate the cache based on the device type. So for a single page, it would have one cache for desktop, one cache for tablet, one cache for mobile. Similarly, if your website requires you to have or if your website showing content that is different based on where the user is coming from, or rather which country the user is coming from, then the cache by country might be more useful to you, because instead of having one singular cache for the entire globe, when you turn on this option, this will ensure that your cache is segregated across the country. By that, what it means is, if a user is coming from US, they would have just a, they are seeing the US cache version of the page. If they're coming from Germany, then they would see the cache version for that country, and so on and so forth. Finally, there is this minification settings. So there's like HTML minification, CSS minification, JavaScript minification. You can either turn them all on, or you can just turn on one of them and turn off the rest. You can just use it however you would like. Minification will make sure that if there are any files like CSS or JavaScript, there are any blank spaces which are not needed, they gets removed and minified so that your file sizes become smaller. Then there comes this smart image loading option. So smart image loading is an option that will basically load your images on your web page, especially for mobile devices with a slower internet connection like 2G or 3G. So when you turn on this option, the images first will be loaded in a low resolution format, and then the high resolution version of the images will be loaded. But the problem with this is, on certain websites, on certain themes, on certain designs, we have seen that this option creates a CLS issue on the web page, basically jumping the content from one place to another, which is why we do not turn on this option by default. And it is highly recommended that if you turn on this option, make sure that you are testing your web page or website thoroughly to ensure that there is no issues whatsoever. Then comes the image optimization. So we provide the default image optimization for all of our website in a lossy format to ensure that images are fully optimized and served in the next gen format, that is WebP, to ensure that like images are served in the most optimized way. But for some reason, if you don't want to provide a optimized version of the image to the user, or rather if you don't want a lossy optimization on your images, so lossy optimization will make sure that the images are mostly optimized to the maximum potential. But if you don't want that, or if you don't want the WebP feature enabled on your website, you can change the image optimization to lossless, which will make sure that it is not that optimized, and rather it is just removing the basic metadata from the images and not optimizing the images to its maximum potential. And you can also turn off the image optimization if you ever need. Early hint is a much more technical thing. You can read about early hint in Google if you want to read about it. So early hint basically allows you to send a couple of extra files through the headers to tell the browser to load this file early before loading the page. It is a bit more technical thing, but if you, for some reason, if you want to turn off early hint on your website, you can also able to do that through the settings page. Then comes the Rocket Loader. So Rocket Loader is a Cloudflare way of delaying JavaScript. We have seen a Rocket Loader create some issues on some websites, which is why we do not enable it by default across all of our customers. But if you would like to use the Rocket Loader on your website, you can turn on that option. And by turning that on, what's going to happen is all of your JavaScript will be delayed a bit by Cloudflare Rocket Loader functionality to make sure that your web page is load a bit more faster. Then under security settings, you would find there is an option called Web Application Firewall, or WAF, which comes baked in through all of our performance and security and maintenance services. And inside that, basically, we are protecting your website from the nefarious actors on the internet, from the bad bots and everyone, to ensure that bad actors cannot harm your website or cannot make any kind of bad request to your website. But for some reason, if you would like to turn off the web application firewall for your website, you would be able to do that from the settings page as well. Finally, there is this email obfuscation. What that does is, in your web page, if you have an email ID mentioned, like someone@example.com, generally that email ID is pretty easily visible if a bot is accessing that page, and they can basically copy that email ID, put it in some kind of list, and spam through that email ID. To protect that, Cloudflare has an option called email obfuscation. What that does is, when you turn on that option, Cloudflare will scan your web page and it will replace all email IDs. Like wherever you have an email ID, it will replace that with a garbage text so that these bots cannot copy that information. But keep in mind that when you enable email obfuscation, Cloudflare will add a bit of JavaScript on your web page to turn that garbage text back to email ID to the real user who are accessing your web page on the web browser. Then there comes the security level. Now what the security level does is, it basically adds a protection to your website from the bad actors of the internet. Now by default, we set it to the medium settings, which is the much more balanced protection. But if you are thinking that, like, you are seeing much more suspicious users coming to your website, or much more suspicious behavior from your user, you can either set it to high, or We generally don't recommend setting it to low, but if you think that your website is like only very trustworthy visitors are coming from, then you can set it to low. Basically, when you set it to low, then it will only block your website from very highly suspicious visitors. But if it is set to medium, then it will be a balanced production, and when it is set to high, then basically challenge any visitor that is not a recent visitor. So it's basically much giving you a much more external protection. Then in the end, we have the under attack mode, which is very useful if you are suddenly seeing a high DDoS attack on your website and you want to protect, have a managed challenge page show to each user before they can access the actual page. Then you can turn on this option. And when you turn on this option, what's going to happen is any user that is accessing any of your web page, first they would see a managed challenge page. They first will be verified that they are not a bad bot and an actual human user, and then they would be redirected to the actual web page. Do keep in mind that if you enable the under attack mode, it does not affect any of the verified bot, that is like Google bot, Bing bot, or anything else. So that's it for the settings page. We do plan to add more settings to the settings page in future, but for now, these are all the options that we have on the settings page. Please try it out and let us know what you think of it. Thanks.